So welcome back to the 10-6 Diaries. So obviously last episode we finished off with a nice little season's best running 11.09 with zero wind, which was a big improvement on my season opener of 11.18 with a plus. I think it was plus 1.6 or 1.8 wind, but it was quite a high legal wind obviously, so good progress from the opener to the second race of the year. And it was also really nice to get the win as well. It's just good for confidence, I guess, like early season to get a result like that. Even if the win was by like 2,000ths, a win is a win. So we take it. But yeah, good signs for early season. But after the race, since I just did one single race, there wasn't like a second race, I just got straight back into training because I wasn't really super fatigued. So I was able to just get straight back into things. I was just kind of focusing on health still, so the session the next day after the meet wasn't really, anything crazy. You'll see the session here. I did go kind of heavy on these hip thrusts, but it was my first time using this machine and I'm honestly not happy with the form, like looking back at it, but it was, I don't really know what it was, but it just felt really awkward to like use this machine. I don't know if I'm maybe like using it wrong, but yeah, that was the issue. But as I kind of like mentioned, the main thing was just trying to build fatigue up after the meet, because obviously I was then going to be competing in 10 days time. So my issue was that if I don't do enough post-competition, you're going to kind of not have enough fatigue to unload from. So I know a lot of times like fatigue in this sort of sprinting world is almost like demonized, and you don't want to be fatigued, you don't want to be, you want to be fresh all the time and running, like new fast times all the time. But it is important to have at least some fatigue in the system so that you can unload from that. Because fatigue obviously as well, it is a double-edged sword, because obviously it also can cause injury if you're too fatigued. That's when injury maybe arises. But if you're not fatigued enough, you're going to just underperform in your meets. So it's kind of a double-edged sword of like too much fatigue, you're going to underperform. Too little fatigue, you're gonna underperform. So it's like finding the right balance where you can kind of like unload from it. So that was kind of the idea behind just getting these sessions in and just trying to kind of build that fatigue up. So I then did a general day the day after that, and then got straight back into sprinting on the Saturday. So ran some 30-meter flies. I was actually running really bad for the first 2 reps. It was like over 3.2 seconds and just did not feel great. I think because I still sort of felt a little bit fatigued from the meet, and obviously then like doing the lifting probably just created more fatigue, and that's probably why I was a little bit apprehensive going into the session. But we did manage to get a low 3 second, I think it was 3.02 video timed, so it wasn't a bad rep honestly. I think that's my fastest 30-meter fly of the year. It's the first time I've ran a 30-meter fly this year, so good times certainly considering that. Can't complain too much, and I think with like less fatigue, I think like 2.9 mid to 2.9 low should be doable this season, but we'll just kind of see as we progress. Obviously training numbers and competition numbers for myself usually are quite different. Like I'll do a lot better in competition, which you will see I guess like later on in the video. But yeah, that was the Saturday session. I then wanted to really kind of create the fatigue at the start of the week, so I was going to be competing on the Sunday. So on the Monday I then got straight back to it with a 110 session. So it was a sprint float session, so it wasn't quite like max effort, but still quite an intense session because you're kind of accelerating hard for 40 meters, floating for 50, then trying to kind of like re-accelerate for the final 20. So it was still obviously quite an intense session, and I could really feel the fatigue during the session. Like everything just felt a lot slower, nothing really felt like snappy, just did not feel good in general. I still was probably getting into the kind of like upper 9 meter per second range during this session, like 9.7s, maybe 9.8s, but I think just the biggest issue was I just felt really fatigued, obviously running 2 days prior. And I had like a full day off in between it, so I ran like the 30-meter fly session, day off, then it was the 110s. So I think obviously that's quite a lot of kind of, it's a lot of intensity over the course of like 3 days essentially. So it was good to do that, I think, in hindsight, like looking at it. However, I think I would have liked one more rest day going into my competition, but it's good to kind of like do these things and experiment with things and figure out what works for an individual. Maybe some people just prefer having less volume year round, some people prefer more volume. It just kind of depends I guess on the person. But I also did some jumps after the 110 session. You'll see there my friend was doing some like hurdle hops, so I was like, it'd be rude not to join in. So I did a few of those. RSI was in the kind of 3 high range to like 4 low, like 4.1 kind of range. So not really too bad, not my finest work. I've obviously been in the kind of 4.7, 4.8 range for RSI before. So yeah, you know, not my best, but not too bad considering I don't really do hurdle hops ever. So I did that, and then I also did some block snatches because I just kind of like felt like adding a little bit more volume in with lifts. I hadn't really done Olympic lifts in a while, so I was just kind of like curious to see what I could throw up on that day. And they didn't feel too bad, to be fair. I think just because there's not really a technique component, you can just kind of like do some block you know, Olympic lifts from the blocks, and you're not going to feel too bad because it's just easy to do. So yeah, that was that session. Then the day after, I was back in the weight room with this slow strength session, doing some 80 kilo reps for some deep slow squats. Again, just kind of like building a little bit of fatigue. The session isn't really designed as an intense session, it's more just a kind of like health type session where I'm trying to focus on just being healthy in general. Then after this session, it was then like just a general day, so nice and easy. So when I say general day, what I mean is just kind of like basic sort of movements, nothing fatiguing. It's pretty much like active recovery, but you're sort of still adding maybe like a little bit of fatigue with, say, like a core circuit or something like that, but nothing like super intense. So that's what I mean when I say general day. So that's what I did for those days. Then the final day was an acceleration day, which you will see in a minute. It did not go great. I do recap the session after I run it, but it wasn't ideal, obviously running into a headwind and having, you know, some like other problems, obviously being fatigued from earlier in the week as well, just didn't help. But very slow, very low quality session. Not necessarily a bad thing before a meet, because obviously, you know, if you're that fatigued, then you can just kind of like unload a little bit and you should run faster. But yeah, I'll recap that later on in the video, so I hope you enjoy the rest of the video, and you know, the best bits are yet to come because you'll see my races, which I was very happy with. But yeah, I appreciate everyone tuning in, and I will, you know, hand you over to past Cami. Right, so I thought I'd do a little recap of this session. So I just finished up, just going to pack my stuff away whilst I'm doing this, but it's been a pretty mid session, honestly. Like, I was running some 30s, so it was 3 times 30, and just nothing really seemed to click today. 3 days out from a meet, so it's not a great sign, but I always think, like, you know, you can't read into things too much. Like, I had one of my worst sessions ever 3 days post my sort of season best last year, so I can't really read into it too much. I just have to kind of, you know, keep going. One good thing is, because I ran so bad, I'm not really gonna have, like, it's not gonna be as intense on my body, which is like a nice thing, so that's kind of like positives to look at. But I just have to kind of see where I'm at. Like, I'll do my shakeout on Saturday, so tomorrow's off, shakeout, then competing Sunday, so just sort of see where I'm at come Sunday, really. That's like the idea behind it. Like, so far for the season, 11:18 opener, 11:09, 11.09 with 0 wind, so not really bad, like a bit of a mixed bag. But yeah, I'll just kind of see how I can kind of progress this season. Certainly kind of feeling good, obviously, post that comp, and I've kind of like crushed myself after that comp a little bit, so I can like unload for this one. So I guess this session was like maybe it was kind of expected almost. But yeah, I'll see where I am come Sunday, and that's kind of the thoughts going in. Right, so back to present day Cami. Thank you, past Cami, for the little recap of the last session. So yeah, ran this little shakeout session. So my shakeouts pretty much involve like a full warm-up stretching, doing a few skips, and then I like to do a few 3-point starts for 10 meters, just kind of pushing in the sort of 95%, like not really focusing on going really hard, just focusing on getting kind of good feeling, a kind of just springiness, just trying to stimulate the CNS, get ready for some fast runs tomorrow. Similar idea with all the jumps that I'm doing. It's just kind of a way to, you know, kind of get the nervous system firing a little bit, get that kind of like snappy good feeling before a competition. As well, I've been quite enjoying using the kind of hands on hip counter movement jumps just to track, I guess, like readiness in a sense. Like if my hands on hip counter movement jump is in a good place, then, you know, there's a good chance I'll probably run quite well. Especially like the day before, like that's going to be a pretty good indicator of where your kind of form will be roughly at. Obviously out with like, you know, maybe having like a bad sleep and everything, but I think like overall, looking at the races, I would have probably preferred one more day's rest. So I'd wished if the race had been on the Monday instead of the Sunday, I feel like I would have executed like one of the perfect sort of like peaking plans. I feel like I would have ran a lot better with just one more day's rest in the tank, but it's something that I can kind of like take with and learn from for future competitions. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the races sort of overall, but I was very happy with, you know, everything in general, apart from obviously race 1, that was just dreadful, but I did come back a lot stronger for race 2, which is the main thing, just having that mentality to come back after a poor performance is very important. So that's kind of my thoughts on my races. I will kind of recap at the end of the video. It's a little bit yappy, but you know, I guess you can kind of like watch if you want to see my thoughts on races.
Go on, lads. Go on, son. Come on.
Right, so I thought I would just kind of recap the race that I did yesterday. So I've worked sort of 2 days in the run up to it, then I had my race, then I've worked today and I'm working tomorrow. So I've had like a pretty packed past sort of like 5 days, but I'm going to be, you know, happy to hit my bed tonight because I'm feeling really tired. I think I had like 5 hours sleep last night, which is not ideal, but I never really get great sleeps anyway. But yeah, back to the races. So race number 1 was 11:18 into a minus 0.8 wind. So it's a headwind PR for the year, I guess. First time I've ran into a headwind this year. So I can't complain too much with that, I guess. But I just didn't really feel great during like warm-ups even. Nothing felt like it was really clicking into place. Didn't feel kind of like snappy or anything, and yeah, the performance showed that. Race number 2, I then took some caffeine, which I think was probably the sort of biggest determinant of my improved performance for the second race. I think that and the fact that I had a really good wind behind me helped out a lot. So race number 2, 11:91 or 10:91, sorry, not 11:91, 10:91, and it was with a plus 2.1. Like, talk about like the worst wind you could actually run with. Like 2.1, like it's so close. If the wind was just blowing slightly less, I would have had like a nice little legal PB, but that matches my wind legal PB. So last year and even the year before that, I ran 10:91 into a plus 3.8 wind. So even so, it's progress, a really good step in the right direction. I think like, you know, I'd say like I probably would have ran the 10:91 if the wind was like 2 meters per second. Like 0.1 meters per second of wind is not really gonna make a massive difference to your performance. So I'm looking forward now to like running more meets. Looking forward to like the next meet even. I think the idea is the plan is the 5th of June. There is like it's like a Glasgow Jaguars, it's like a track and field club that's in like the National Athletics League in Britain. So there is that meet that I could possibly do this weekend, but I don't know if I'm on the team yet. I don't think I am on the team, like based off of like people's performances this year, but
I don't know, I'll just have to like wait and see. Like I think it's close, but I don't know if I'm quite good enough. I feel like my outdoor form's maybe not been as good as some of the others, so not really expecting to do that. So I'm planning for the 5th of June at the moment. So I'm about to do a little session here, and then that'll kind of be me back into the week, and then I'll do like a general day, and then Wednesday probably do I want to do like max velocity, I think, and then maybe like speed endurance at the weekend, and then I'll have my meet on the 5th. I think that's the plan, but I'll see how things go. But yeah, so during the 1091 race as well, I felt like I got out quite well. I didn't feel like I got out like amazingly well. I feel like I maybe could have been slightly better, because I felt like everyone kind of was like, so like it almost felt like everyone was quite even to begin with. I maybe had like a slight lead on everyone, but I think it was maybe like the reaction time that kind of like skewed my perception, because I think some people had slightly better reactions than me, which obviously then puts them like, you know, 0.002 ahead of me, you know, in the first kind of few meters. So it's possibly that was like skewing my perception. But then got to kind of like the 60 meter phase, and this is usually where people will then start to kind of like pull and, you know, like get even with me, or start to kind of like pull away a little bit. But like I could feel the guy on my shoulder, like I felt like he was getting closer from like the 50, from like the 30 to the 50 or 60 even. But then like after that, I just kind of seemed to, I don't know, I seemed to hit like a second gear almost, and I kind of just like kept going. Like obviously I was decelerating, but like decelerating less than the people around me, which is like, it was like really weird. I've never experienced it before, like in my life, of this kind of like, this like pulling away, like consistent pulling away. Because like when I won my first race 2 years ago, I was like kind of like out from the gun, like ahead. And like a lot of the times, the races since then that I have won have been like very close. Like even the last one that I won at Birmingham, it was like very close. There was like 2000th in it, and I was like ahead like in the first kind of 30-40 meters. But this one was like, I was quite even with everyone, maybe slightly ahead, and then I felt them kind of coming back, but then I kind of just was able to maintain that speed, not maintain it, but decelerate less than everyone else. So yeah, it was a very good race. I think it's my biggest win margin in a race as well. I think it's 0.14 seconds. So very happy with it. I think it's a good omen for things to come. Definitely going to try and take caffeine for the first race of the day now, to try and set the tone a little bit more for the rest of the competition. But nice little 0.27 seconds faster from race 1 to race 2, which was nice. So that's really it for the recap. I'll, you know, finish up here. I'll see you in the next episode of the 10-6 Diaries, and hopefully we can get a wind legal sub 11. That was also like my goal, was to go sub 11 for me. So I think I'll give myself running sub 11 in May, because I pretty much did run sub 11 in May, just not legally, but there's not much I could really do about that, I guess. So yeah, I'll take it. But that's been it for this episode.